Hi, and welcome to my urban ecology project. So why urban ecology? It has become clear in the last few years that the impact humans have on the environment is very important into understanding ecology as a whole. Therefore, it has become essential that we start looking at urban ecology in order to understand the broader ecosystems. What is urban ecology? A subdiscipline of ecology that studies how urbanization affects organisms and ecosystem processes. This brings humans into the system as we do in fact directly affect the world. This is important for us as Creighton students to look at, as Creighton University is located in Omaha, which is a more urban environment compared to much of rural Nebraska. We'll be looking at this study in relation to heat island research done in places like Madison, Wisconsin, and Oklahoma to better understand the long-lasting impact of urbanization. We do know that urbanization leads to higher extreme heat and a lower likelihood of exposure to extreme cold due to the different buildings and concretes that we use in cities. The experimental methods we'll be using for this experiment include using EasyLog USB loggers. We chose 2 locations on campus that were near each other but still different enough that we would get different data and placed our loggers there for a few days. My group decided to choose the McGloin parking lot as well as the grassy area on the east side of McGloin Hall. We chose these areas because they are very different in what is around them, as well as the fact that we haven't really looked in this area of campus during the semester in this lab. Here we have our temperature results. The darker blue is the McGloin parking lot area, and the lighter blue is the McGloin grassy area. As you can see, temperatures spiked and lowered at about the same times, which would make sense because while they are in different areas, the major temperature shifts would have been felt around all areas of campus. You can also see, based off the time that it was taken, the day and night. However, there is a significant difference between the McGloin parking garage area and the McGloin grass. We can see that in the garage area, the temperatures were higher than in the grass area. This would make sense as the logger was more exposed to the sun and was around concrete pavement. Here we have our temperature data analysis. The mean of the McGloin parking lot was 56.24. The mean of the east side McGloin dorm was 51.6. And the standard deviations were 13.43 and 14.3 respectively. Here we have our humidity results. Now, opposing the temperature results, we can see that the McGloin grass area had significantly higher humidity than the parking garage area. I do think it's also important to note that while there is a significant difference, they do fluctuate at the same rates, which once again reflects the fact that while these are in different locations, the temperature changes and humidity changes that were occurring on campus were pretty universal. That being said, there is an obvious difference you can tell that with the logger that was placed in the wood chips around the concrete in the parking lot compared to that of the grass that was surrounded by different plant species, trees, and probably more water gathering if it rained. Here we have our humidity data analysis with the McGloin parking lot having a mean of 37.49 and a standard deviation of 13.78. And the east side of the McGloin dorm having a mean of 57.9 and a standard deviation of 24.76. Now, when we're thinking about the Jesuit Gardens and the work we've done in there, we can guess that the Jesuit Gardens would have a higher humidity as there are more trees present as well as other plant species than our more urban setting of the parking garage and even of the McGloin dorm. While the dorm does have more plant life and different species, it is more urban, if you will, because of the sidewalks and the buildings. The temperature is lower in areas that don't have large amounts of concrete, like the McGloin parking lot, so we can also assume that the Jesuit Garden on average would have a lower temperature and a higher humidity like we saw in the grassy areas. We can also probably assume that the Jesuit Gardens would have a higher humidity and lower temperature than the grassy areas of the McGloin lot. I pulled this quote from one of the research articles that Zhao was an author of, and it says, "Spatial configurations of urban green spaces would affect the cooling intensity of urban forests. By generating a more comprehensive understanding in how forest vegetation can better cool its interior thermal environment and the surrounding urban areas, it may be possible to maximize the cooling effect in urban planning from the incipient planning stage. I found this very interesting as he was talking directly about planning urban environments so that you have these more urban green spaces in the urban environment. But I found it interesting that having these areas directly affects the temperature of the whole environment. I think this is very interesting as we have different areas around campus that are more parking lot and building oriented and some specific areas that have more plant life. I wonder if maybe when Creighton was being built, this was taken into account and how much it's talked about today. So what are some conclusions we can draw? Like the study done in Madison, Wisconsin, Omaha is a bit of a heat island as plant life is limited to specific areas. Looking outside of Creighton University, when you're driving around the Omaha area, there's definitely obvious areas where there are parks and obvious areas where, like in downtown Omaha, you just have buildings and a more city landscape. Obviously, obvious differences are still observed when comparing the parking lot in an area with more plant life. So, despite the fact that Creighton is one small area in comparison to the rest of the state, and the areas like the parking lot and the grassy areas are not that different in the way they're set up, there is still obvious humidity changes and temperature variances, meaning that urban ecology is not that hard to tell the differences. I believe that further study would be useful in looking at how the different areas around campus support different animal and insect species, like the research that was done in Oklahoma. I wonder if you would see different species on the east side of the McGloin dorm as compared to the parking lot, even though they are pretty close to each other. It'd be interesting to see if perhaps the squirrels we looked at in the Jesuit Garden experiment, if those squirrels would stay more isolated to the side of campus, the east side of the McGloin dorm, because there's more tree cover and more grass, or if they would venture out into the parking lot on the off chance they could pick up some food that was left there. And my last slide is the 3 references of the articles that were posted on the module. These were very helpful in understanding the greater effect of heat islands as well as urban ecology. Thank you.